As I mentioned, the latest economic data have come in stronger than expected, which suggests that the ultimate level of interest rates is likely to be higher than previously anticipated.
Welcome to Financial Stockholm. I'm Christopher Crystal. Today is Tuesday, March 14th, 2023, and these are my thoughts and observations. None of this is to be considered investment advice. For all investing needs, you should really be speaking to your own registered representative and discussing your strategy with them. All I'm doing is pointing out things that can perhaps add to the conversation and give you some food for thought. So what we've seen lately in Sweden, or today, is we have this continued theme of violence here in Sweden, and this is an increasing trend. We've seen an increase in crime worldwide, so that is one side to it. And that's probably a direct effect of the COVID lockdowns and the stress that was caused by it. But now we also have it increasing in Sweden, and we have political parties taking up the discussion about it. And so the latest involvement will now be, what is the role of the schools, and what's happening there? Are the kids being taught criminality at a young age, or are they going to school and learning the right things? So this is being disputed between the sides. And then on top of it, in the past, between 2014 to 2017, I highlighted that EU paper you can read that was produced by the EU about the effects of a mass migration into a country. And we had that experience from 2014 to 17. And the EU paper said, if you're going to take in that many people, have jobs. That's not exactly how they said it, but that's pretty much how they said it, or what they said. So you need to have this as part of your thoughts, because right now we have a lot of criminality in Sweden. We have a lot of gang violence, and a lot of these people who are involved in the gangs have not had the right education, so to speak, and B, find it very difficult for their parents or for themselves after they graduate to get jobs. And so what's happened now is, with this increased gang violence, there's a report that the family members are being shipped out of country to other countries. And it's not clear whether those countries are the home country where they emigrated from, or if it's to countries like Spain or Germany, within the EU, where they can stash their family members so they'll be safe. So this is turning into a political debate where some are saying they're doing it to avoid being put into court and then going through a trial, and others are saying, well, no, they're just going on a long vacation, and they're not doing it to protect themselves. They're just running out of Sweden. And so the people are saying, well, what happens to the Swedes who can't leave? So it's turning into a larger political debate. That, while we look at our police budget, and many are critical and saying, hey, the police need to do more. And why aren't they doing more? And so people are saying, well, we have to increase the budget. And this is all on the anxiety of your healthcare. In Sweden, we've seen that the healthcare has been diminished, or the services. So there's a question on these online services. Can the nurses be more involved, or how could the nurses be more a part of this? Because we don't have enough doctors, nor do we have enough nurses. But maybe this could be a way to alleviate it, the pressure on some of them. So we'll see. And then in our capital in Stockholm, they had a lot of snow. We had a lot of snow down here, but the Swedes have forgotten how to deal with snow. And right now you have a leftist, the Vänster Party, and Social Democrat Party control of Stockholm. So the buses don't work in the snow, the trains don't work in the snow, and yet these are people who will make sure that the bike lanes are plowed. So you can't get a bus, you can't get a train, but you can bike in Stockholm in the bike lane on a day when nobody's got their bikes out. So this is really kind of an epitomization of what's going on in Sweden, and how things are being taken to extremes, and the progress just really isn't adding up. So there certainly are a lot of good short candidates out there. But and so to really kind of typify or be the mean, you have Greta Thunberg. She was out there, I think it was 5 years ago, saying how Sweden, and people could be dead by 2023, would be extinct if we didn't act aggressively on climate. And apparently she's sanitized some of those tweets and edited them. And this really is kind of the meme itself, is that here you have environmentalist policies lead to a inability to deal with natural events like snow with buses and trains. But she did make those statements, and it was before she completed high school. She left school. So I've read that she had learning disabilities, so perhaps that could have been why she caught up and she wanted to change statements. But I think what's most depressing for the Swedish economy was today we have two key announcements that are very negative for our economy overall. One is that our energy minister, Ebba Busch, who went around the country campaigning on nuclear, okay? She even used the term, we didn't want to have any more steel shadows being cast all over the land. So the windmills or the wind turbines and the shadows that they cast and the noise that they make, she campaigned against it and was saying about nuclear. Well, today, she's come out and said no to Ringhal 1 being restarted. And the thought is that she says it's going to be too expensive. And that's because she's going for the short-term solution of windmills. Now, we have a number of Swedish experts on energy. There's a number of experts in America. You have several very, very good examples of what happens when you abandon sound policies. And if you look at Germany, what they've done with their nuclear and now with the wind power and the solar, and how they've invested more money in coal. I think it's $1 trillion so far for the last year on what they've been doing. And if you look at, say, California, how they've been a leading state in the United States, and Texas, who put 66 billion from 2020 into 2021, 2022, 2021, which is when they had that winter storm, how they couldn't rely on the renewables. Renewables are good, but you have to use them for what you can. So it's kind of like taking a 10-speed racing bike that you would use on the Tour de France. You cannot go mountain biking with it in the woods. It will be destroyed. You will break it. And you can bike, but not for very long and not for very far, and not at all very fast. So you have to take this concept with the energy sources that you're producing. And another great example of how this is not worked is take a look at Sri Lanka. Look what happened to them when they adopted policies in a way that was too fast and in a way that they could not replace and continue how they were going and how life had been. So there is speculation that the German government and people from companies like Uniper are pressuring Ebba Busch to tell her not to go nuclear, and that's unfortunate. Because we still have a very high amount of inflation here in Sweden, especially on the food prices. So you see a lot of discussions in the newspaper about the food companies like Axe Food, which is they own Willys, or the chain Ica or the Coop, and they're talking about how the food's not good at each every other place. But the real problem is that the food is still very expensive, and it's getting a little more aggressive on the ads. The Ica is getting a bit of rebellion on the social media. The Willys is getting a bit of mud throwing, where people are saying the food's rotten or it's not good. So as a result, you have people reacting to this in our enterprise industry or enterprise ministry. The chief economist, he and the head of the enterprise industry came out with a comment about, a debate article discussing how the budget by the current government needs to be readdressed and needs to put Sweden back into a more competitive landscape and make us more productive and help develop a reliable source of energy. And I think, and as Ebba Busch is the minister who would be the person they should talk to, and she was on a national TV program sponsored by the state a few weeks ago, talking with Northvolt about windmills and the process and getting energy. And she seems to fail to understand what needs to be done and how quickly this needs to be done. So, you know, and I mention this because today it was announced by Volkswagen that they're going to be producing electric cars in the United States. So that's a dramatic shift from what we saw previously. Obviously, they can't produce in Europe because of the cost of energy. And they're going to bring along a battery company, which they own over 20% of, and that's called Northvolt. And Northvolt, which had the Vesterås 1, the Vesterås, the Skellefteå, which was Northvolt 2, and they were going to have the Northvolt 3 down in Germany. Instead, PowerCo is going to produce batteries in Ontario. So Northvolt's going to Canada, and so will those jobs. I think it's going to be 20,000 for the first round. This would have been something like 100,000 jobs in total that would have been created by Northvolt, and unfortunately will be lost. And it plays off directly what the United States is doing with their Inflation Reduction Act. So they give out the subsidies where for every $4 you spend, you get one free, or you say for every 5 you get one back. And then and so these cars are going to be seen as produced in the United States, North America, and we'll see how many of those they'll sell back to the to Europe. But I have a feeling that they're going to be selling in Mexico as well. And you know, Musk is setting up his plants in Texas. He's setting up a plant in Mexico. Volkswagen wants to compete directly with Tesla. That's obvious. And they're going to be taking out something like 35 different models. And but you know, remember, they're starting from a little bit behind the curve, and we'll see what happens because Polestar, which is the Swedish company, that company is going to be developing in Gothenburg, where Northvolt will be completing the batteries for the producers, are only to be sold in the United States or Canada, United States, and Mexico. So it's an unfortunate loss for us in Sweden, but this is why the Minister of Energy and Enterprise needs to get going with making the process easier for the nuclear power plants. So no comments yet back from Vattenfall. I haven't seen anything there about the you know, SMRs. But this is very troubling to see that this minister is turning around and going opposite of what she campaigned on. So, but I mean, hey, why not? Because she's still retiring with a full politician's pension. So her life is unaffected. And it's unfortunate for us. But we have a lot of discussion still as a result, and we should, about the Silicon Valley Bank. The question yesterday was about, is there systemic risk? You know, what's going to happen? The finance inspection met with the pension companies and the banks. They've come out with their statements saying that there's not an issue of systemic risk here in Sweden. But I think what's most unusual about the whole transaction is that Electa built the position. Electa became the fourth largest holder. Electa now has a 12 billion Swedish kronor loss. So okay, maybe it's not so much when you compare it to the whole portfolio. But if you look at the profile of the former CIO at Electa, the current CIO, the policies that they lay out, it's a very unusual strategy that they were employing, because from the time of April 2022, the chief risk officer at Silicon Valley Bank had already resigned. This person, she had left her position, and the position was open. So it wasn't a filled position for 8 months. Now you could say, okay, we need to take the time to replace and get the right person in there. Or you could go by the banking regulation and protocols and have a chief risk officer and put somebody in there in the short term, in the interim period, to be fulfilled by a long-term person. Or presumably that person who would be hired from internal would have the qualification. Because if you look at the qualifications of these people who worked at Silicon Valley Bank, you had people from the San Francisco Fed, you had former Deutsche Bank people, you had former Lehman Brothers. So you had seasoned people, you had people from the ratings agencies. So this is very strange that they didn't have this position filled. And then it's very strange that the Electa continued to hold the position. And not only did they hold the position, but they added to the position in December. So this is a very unusual scenario where it seems like people were being guided by, well, it's the best ESG bank, and it's won the best bank of the year this year in a row, or how many years in a row. And they were picking up in England different awards, and they were picking up in California different awards. And unfortunately, this is again another example, ill comprehension of what you're doing. To build a large position in a regional bank in California, and then to build another regional bank position in New York, it's very unusual. Had they invested in, say, Wells Fargo, Bank of America, they would have covered both of this, and they would have gotten the benefit of now, because the Silicon Valley Bank, a lot of the accounts are going over to JP Morgan. And so we'll see what happens with this signature. We'll see what happens with the other bank in New York. It's very dangerous what's happening where these banks are regional players, and then they're being invested in by our pension companies. And the worst part about it is there's not one administration that's to blame for this. Remember, Obama inherited the mess from Bush. Okay. Barney Frank, who was a senator who put in Dodd-Frank Act. Actually, they were in the House of Representatives, I think. So Christopher Dodd and then Barney Frank, and they put together this act back in the day when Republicans and Democrats still worked together. And Barney Frank was on the board of one of the banks that's recently gone under. And now, as of now, and this bank wasn't really following, or this is the criticism, the Dodd-Frank Act. And remember, during this period of time, it's shortly after, all the way back in the Clinton years when the budget was balanced. So it's really kind of, you're seeing a lot of disastrous decisions which are really geared by emotion as opposed to, being smart and going by the facts. Of course, in the U.S., you have a lot of people saying, hey, go woke, go broke. You have the Biden administration giving a bailout. Yellen is effectively bailing out Silicon Valley Bank. And, if you lose, you have to pay the price. And it's not for the people who didn't invest in the bank to have their tax dollars. And that comes in the form of creating dollars, creating more inflation, printing more money, putting it over to the Silicon Valley Bank. That comes out of the tax dollar of the taxpayer. So it's unfortunate, but that's what's happening. And remember, if you look back at the TARP program and how JP Morgan, Deutsche Bank, how all the banks, the large banks, were involved in the discussions, and then what amounts they received. Now, I think with this, one of the things that's been very interesting development is, obviously people like gold, but people are also looking at crypto. But there are new taxation rulings coming on crypto mining, what you can file and how you've got to file and how you've got to register it. I'm personally not a fan of the crypto because I just see it as another fiat and it has no asset backing it. But that's my opinion. And, that's never investment advice. It's just how I'm looking at it. So for your investment advice and what you're doing, talk to your advisor. In Denmark, we see that Novo Nordisk has come out where they're going to lower the price of their insulin. This is in relation to what Eli Lilly did, where Eli Lilly dropped it down to $35 a month in the US for the insulin. And Novo Nordisk will put it within the range. I don't think they're going to match it at 35, but I think Novo Nordisk claims to have a better quality insulin. So I'm not sure, but Novo Nordisk has a fantastic product called Ozempic, and this is the fat busting drug. You take it and you don't change your diet, you can lose 20% of your weight because it does something where it's inhibiting the insulin production. So that inhibits the amount of fat production that you do in your body. So it's a great way to lose weight is what people are saying. I don't know what the side effects are. I haven't read enough about the drug. I just know what it is, and I know everybody in Hollywood's doing it. And if you refine your diet, you'll actually look very, very in shape. So it all depends on the level that you refine your diet for. And I think we may see a positive day to all this negativity. The US CPI came in at 6%. So the idea is that the Fed now doesn't have to raise rates. I think it was Nomura that was coming out with comments saying that they think the Fed is going to cut rates. I doubt that. But remember, this is a Fed that has not recognized inflation, has not recognized the signs of inflation, or they clearly have. Although Powell doesn't have a PhD, the rest of them do, including Brainerd, and she's rumored to be the next Fed head. The idea is that they're not going to raise rates, or they're only going to go by 25 basis points as opposed to 50. Or they may potentially cut. Strategies other than I see raising rates or not raising rates would be viable at this time. You still have a problem with inflation, and it was created by the Fed. But remember, they missed the inflation signs and trends, so they will probably miss again. Janet Yellen, who's head of Treasury, she missed inflation her entire career. Coming over from the Minnesota Fed, where it's run by Chikari today. And it's a great Fed, and a lot of respect for the St. Louis Fed, Atlanta Fed. They produce great pieces. I would look at them and get more of an indication, or at least discussion points for what you can discuss with your investment advisor. And so that might be the good news for the market today. We'll see. Maybe Sweden will also pause its rate hiking, or maybe go at a slower pace. But we do need to get inflation under control. We have yet to do that, as has Europe yet to do that, as has the United States. Because remember, it's still 6% inflation. That's still an inflation growth. So hopefully all of this helps. So you're liked and you're subscribed. And you can find all the information on Substack. I post the notes there, and then there are links so you can get the information. With that, we're going to wish you a great day. Happy hunting, because remember, you can always make money in the market. Even if the market's going down, you can go short. If the market you think is going to go up, you can go long. You can have short-term strategies, long-term strategies. It's all up to you and your investment advisor. So thank you very much, and have a good one. Bye.